Good evening. So you will see me more often during this week, so welcome once more, and especially welcome for those joining for the evening who haven't been with us for the day. So there's a few more people joining in to listen in on the discussion. So most of those know me, but nevertheless, so I'm Nils Nissen from Fraunhofer IPMS in Berlin, and so I will be your moderator for the discussion now. I will actually also be the moderator on Thursday when you will be presenting. So, but today you can relax and listen in, but nevertheless, I would like to see questions from your side as well, kind of after we do our initial round of questions. So think about what you want to ask us as the experts, ask us about the direction industry is taking, ask us about what job opportunities are open for sustainability, ask us anything that kind of connects to the people I will just introduce right now. So, having said that, I would like to introduce the panel. So if you come up here, so the panel is, well, now it's a question with German and English again, yeah. So it's Antje Zehm from VDE-IT. She's covering more the policy side, so funding of research, not the politics side, right? But we'll come to that in the discussion. So, and then Annika Wandesleben, she's from Fraunhofer IPMS, and you know the institute already. And so she will be more on the research side, obviously. And then we have, and I'm very happy you could join us, it's Christopher Schutzeichel from X-FAB. And some of you will be visiting X-FAB tomorrow in the morning session, right? Not everybody can visit the X-FAB because it's not large enough for all of you together in one go. But nevertheless, so he's from the industry side and from the semiconductor in particular. So, and if you want to get some water, do it now. All right, we do have a few questions prepared, but we'll soon take your questions as well, and then also use just whatever comes up in our discussion up here. But nevertheless, for the starting round, short answers, kind of to get us into the mood for the discussion. So actually, I think, Christopher, I start with you. Yeah. So from the industrial viewpoint, what are the most pressing ecological challenges? So where is industry currently moving or working on?
Yeah, so if I just think about X-FAB specifically, we are very much pressed to work on our environmental topics, of course. If we just think about fabs itself, it's mainly power usage. We have a very heavy power usage. We use a lot of water as well. So these are points which, especially in Dresden now, also are very important. With the new fabs being built and being expanded in Finland, Bosch has the new big fab. TSMC or ESMC is building their fab right now. So that's very important for all of these fabs. And there are already projects running, for example, for water supply. So there's some planning going. We need to use the Elbe River to supply water because the other fresh water is not enough. So that's, of course, something we have to work on all the time. If I think about my role, as now I am in business development, we also, of course, focus on what we can provide in return for using all of that power and all of that water. And there we are mainly also focusing on our GaN technology at the moment. So we want to use that to provide solutions for our customers so they can actually realize solutions, again, to reduce power usage, for example. So that's a very...
Yeah, so I guess we can come back to both water and to non-silicon semiconductors and their role later on. So Antje Zehm, and from your side, where's the current political climate moving? Do we have enough funding, enough chances to do environmental research?
That's a very good question. I'm working for a funding agency or innovation agency, and we have several funding programs and strategies that implement sustainability or sustainable green ICT in funding programs. So, for example, this setting also is kind of a funding project. The Competence Center Green ICT is part of our strategy, and I think there are many, many initiatives. They have to be more combined, and the networking between all these projects is essential, and that's part of my job, I think, to get the connection between all the different strategies of funding and programs and policy papers in this field.
Yeah, and again, so policy for funding doesn't just mean research, funding research, it's also directly working with companies, working with Silicon Saxony, for example, in this area. And Annika, so your connection then to Green Microelectronics.
So my connection is, of course, that I'm surrounded by researchers who are trying to enable more resource efficiently production and also more environmental friendly production, really. So for me, it's also important to communicate this. So what are we doing? What are technical innovations to enable really an environmental friendly production? So it's not just, we want to do it, we have to do it. So, and there are a lot of options. So I think we will talk a lot about this. What are the scopes and different possibilities to enable this?
So maybe if you want to continue maybe on more on like what of these developments are close to industry before we then ask industry what's happening on their side?
So our technical innovations are focused on the 3 scopes. So we have scope 1 is to reduce the climate damaging gases. So therefore we have gas cleaning systems which are already used in the industry, but on the research side, we are working on the optimization of these techniques. So, and we are doing this together directly with the industry. So, we are focused on what is needed, what is really technical possible, then also in the implementation. So, this is for scope 1, and scope 2 is to use green energy. So I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but the semiconductor industry is also an industry that needs a lot of energy. And we can try to use green energy for the production. So, and also for our screening fabs, we are attempting to set to be a role model like this. So to show, okay, you can use photovoltaic and so on your rooftops. There are a lot of options. So this is also what we want to show. And in scope 3, it's then getting really more specific, because scope 3 is the reduction of indirect emissions. So. And that's the point where we really need individual research and technical innovations, because each process is different. So one process we focused on is the chemical mechanical polishing. So this is one of the water-intensive process you can have in semiconductor industry, and we try to recycle the polishing solutions and also the water, so that we have a circular system at the end, and to use our resources as efficient as possible. So these are some technical innovations, and directly normally together with the industry, and we can do this because we have a screening fab, so it means we have all the equipments that the industry have. So we can really show how you can do it with the equipment that you use later in the semiconductor fabrication.
Yeah, so you're already kind of showing how this collaboration can work, because I was going to ask Christopher, well, if there's all these nice ideas about changing processes, changing chemicals, changing the type of electricity or other energy carriers, why don't you use all of that in your fab right away?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we try to use as many new ideas as we can get, of course. Usually they come from inside X-FAB. So we have, of course, our facilities team at each site. as an example, or maybe to give some context, so all of X-FAB sites all over the world are rather old, let's say. So we have never built our own fab anywhere. We usually buy fabs and then refurbish them and adjust them to our needs. But that also means that all the facility around us is very old. So there's a lot of potential there to really improve, to change the tools we use just for water cleanup and so on, to use less energy, be more efficient with the water we have. So that's always running and has been running for a few years already now. As you said, we do have scrubbers, for example, to clean any exhaust gases. There's a lot of potential there still, which is being analyzed. But it always, of course, as a company, you have to look at the financial aspects as well. So usually there's a bit of an evaluation, right? Can you really make that work? Is there a return of investment if you go that route? So there needs to be, of course, some kind of push to move the companies as well to, okay, now let's do it. So that's, I think, a big point where we need to work on as well to get into that direction.
Yeah, so maybe even though I said, Antje, you're not the politics, but nevertheless the push and pull. So what is the role of government or also public funding then to both make it happen, so pulling them in the right direction, but also pushing them with regulation?
We have to think. I think we have to shape the funding instruments and the setting of projects in a way that these sustainable solutions really get on the street. So we have to take care that the funding instruments have certain sustainability criteria, that we choose projects in a way that the consortia is set up as much as interdisciplinary as possible, that we for example also fund long-term partnerships, because you need a kind of trusty relationship between the research and the industry part. So that, I think, is our role as a funding agency, or in case of the politics, to yes.
And so to make this maybe clearer across all of you, if we have a dangerous chemical used in semiconductor manufacturing and we want to set up a research program with public funding, how long would it take to get that running so that researchers can get, or industry can get the money?
Oh.
I will ask the others as well, so it's not towards you.
Yeah, of course we have always a road mapping process in behind. As an innovation agency, we're always talking to the ministry about current topics, about strategic topics for the future, and so we have always kind of ideas in the Schublade. But we have to wait if there's any money from the EU or from the national ministry to be spent on these projects. So that might take 1 to 3 years, anything.
Yeah, and of course there are open calls where if something is really an urgent solution is needed, then there's also possibility. But I was also thinking 2 or 3 years probably. And then Annika, if you now have the money and you want to do a chemical substitution for semiconductor manufacturing, how long until you might have a solution?
So it's really broad, but so as long as we get really all informations that we can get, that's also honestly one of the challenges, to get all informations about the existing chemicals. So normally it's fabrication secret, what's really inside, especially if we come back to the chemical and mechanical polishing, where we also sometimes try to change them. Then it takes, I think, minimum 2 years to set up the experiments, and then to do all the experiments, the testings, and then to optimize everything, that you can at least show, okay, it's possible. You can have the same results, because that's in the end the difficult thing in semiconductors. So we have really small structures and we need a really high quality. So it's not just showing in the lab that you can use this chemical instead of this. It's really, I can get the same quality with this new solution. So that's more the thing that I also need time. So to show, okay, on this production tool, we can enable the same quality for the chip in the end, so for the devices.
And now coming to industry. Now somebody has the perfect substitute. It works. It gives the same results, maybe not immediately the same yield, but whatever. And now you wanted to exchange a chemical in a running process in your fab. What's the obstacle there?
Well, at least for X-FAB, because we are automotive qualified everywhere, so we have to follow automotive qualification rules again, which are a bit more strict, I would say. But nevertheless, so we have these queries quite often, not in a sense of more sustainable, but of course vendors change their, or suppliers change their materials all the time a little bit. So we do go through these qualification loops quite a bit, and if it is really direct replacement, I would say half a year, 1 year maybe. If I think about
that's very promising.
Mechanical polishing specifically, yeah.
But then it comes back to what Annika said before. If it's kind of pre-qualified and a lot of tests have already been run, then you can exchange it fast.
Right, so ideally we would already, while it is in qualification, we would already cooperate then and see what kind of data can we combine, and then in the end it could be even faster. Yeah.
Because I didn't want to discourage you, but just replacing one chemical often takes 10 years, right? And you can see kind of a sequence that is needed. And even in the fab, in a running process which is qualified for certain customers, you can't just change the recipe, right? Nevertheless, we can make changes, and changes are happening, but it takes a lot of time. So it's not like you have the idea, you do the research, and then it's happening in industry. That's what I wanted to get to with this discussion part. So coming back to you, first of all, think about questions, right? Don't forget that. Soon I'll ask you if you have any questions. And also establishing the link towards you as the next generation to enter the field and then hopefully work on more sustainable electronics. So what is the need of qualified people for sustainability and electronics combined? Whoever wants to take that up?
So from my point of view, that's also especially students who coming to us, is an intrinsic motivation. But honestly, it can be both. So it doesn't mean that you have to be just be focused on the environmental topics. That's really nice. But some of our students are also, I don't want to waste resources in general, not just for the environment. So it's really okay. We have to use them as good as possible, and then it's sometimes also easy to connect them with ecological aspects, because that's good for the environment and good for the industry, and these are sometimes also the easiest cases to find a topic and to find funding. So that's nice. But yeah, we have both. So but it's mostly in intrinsic motivation.
So do we have enough qualified workforce for pushing forward with energy efficiency and sustainability? Or is there a gap? Is it like, would you like to have more? Is it like a growing market currently, or is it stable?
Well, so I talked to some people at X-FAB before this, specifically, like what are the requirements that people applying at X-FAB have, and one of them is this intrinsic motivation. So there is not really a need to specifically search for that, actually, because most of the younger people also applying at X-FAB, they expect us to actually tell them why could they have an impact at X-FAB in environmental aspects. So it's very intrinsic.
You want that?
I think we have a gap for skilled workers in this field, and that's why especially the Ministry of Research, Technology and Space is funding a variety of initiatives to get more skilled workers in the field of sustainable electronics. For example, we have the Microtech Academy, a huge funding project where we have a kind of online platform for courses, also for Green ICT courses, to get it free for students, for workers that want to further educate them. So there are many projects along the whole education chain, and we have to talk about it more so that you can profit from them.
So, and if I can add something, these programs, and also think a little bit behind the first and logical steps, the funding is also needed. So, as you already heard, if the change is good for the industry, then it's easy. But we also need changes which are a little bit more fundamental and need really fundamental research also, and it can also damage the intrinsic motivation if you then see, okay, it's really hard to do all this because it needs, on one hand, it needs years from the beginning with the funding process and then to have your first research, and of course you don't find the perfect solution on the first try. So. And then it's also helpful to have at least the government in the back who's funding all this, and not also have the trouble, okay, where can I get money to have all these trials? So that's one important point, not to damage the motivation that we have in the moment, and to still fund more projects also like this today to show, okay, it can be possible if we want.
All right, so time for your questions if you want to, I hope. I'm sure some of you have questions. I already saw you working and discussing today, so anyone who wants to start? The microphone will come over from over there.
Hi, and thanks for the talk and the introduction. And I have a question regarding, in general, do you think there is already over-regulation on the whole area, or would you wish for more regulation from the government to further development in a specific field like reducing LCA?
So maybe I can speak to that. So over the last 2 years, I was part of a team in X-FAB working on the EU CSRD, so the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And our task was to prepare X-FAB, so the global X-FAB corporate management or the whole corporation for this. Because we are, of course, listed in, or the headquarter is in Belgium, so we fall under the EU CSRD, of course, and that also means that all of our sites have to follow that. And I think, and I strongly believe that without this regulation, the amount of work that went into that and even just preparing data, looking into where can we get the data that we need, and setting up the system so that you anyway get all of the data you need for that, which then in turn can be used to analyze where do we need to improve, what do we need to do, where are our weak points, so to say. Without that, I think that we wouldn't have done that intrinsically, because it's just not worthwhile financially. But this forced us a little bit to do it. And I think that is very important. I know it was very annoying because I worked on it myself. And it is very extensive, and it can be improved for sure. And I think this omnibus initiative that was released by the EU to fix a little bit what was done before is very, very helpful. But then again, you look, okay, where are we now? Right now, the CSRD is not transformed into German law or even Belgium law, which applies for X-FAB. So there isn't really there was this very urgent need, okay, we need to prepare for this right now. We have 2 years and then it's over, we need to be ready. And then, okay, suddenly, we don't. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between EU level and then the national level. So, but I think it's very important to go that way and just set the foundation so that you have all of the data and can make informed decisions on where do we actually need to work on.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add, we sometimes directly work for the EU Commission on future legislation. So there is sometimes a danger and has been the danger of overregulation. So there's no question about that. Some of that actually has in the process been stopped or been delayed at least. And what industry mostly wants to have is good regulation. It's not a question of how much regulation. It's if it's good, if it's fitting, then industry is usually actually on board. And the companies who are doing well, who are well organized internally, like to have good environmental laws. Not too many of them, but good ones.
So we also discussed this, specifically the CSRD, with a different company, not in the semiconductor sector, which already was, because of their sector, was already previously required to report much, much more, and they had set this up already very well. So we had a benchmark there, and we saw, okay, we are severely lacking in that sense, because usually a semiconductor, okay, you have a lot of electricity use and water use and maybe some harmful gases, but it's not comparable to, let's say, chemical industry. So there was a very large disconnect. But now with the CSRD, also the semiconductor industry has to follow and work on that, which I think is good.
So thanks for the question. More questions? Any other direction when you want to take us?
Hello, I'm Yasser Zunair. I want to ask one thing. As we are coming with the new regulations to use more sustainable methods, what will be the advantages regarding if the industry is doing in any other country that is not applying these laws? The price will be much higher in EU. So how the customer is agreed to pay the more price? If you have done some studies, that will be helpful for our understanding.
Maybe I can try first. So that's a very good point. So I mean, of course, we have to stay competitive even with this regulation. So and there again, there's the point where are we over-regulating, and where's the line you have to draw to say, okay, if we do more and more and more and more requirements on regulation, then at some point you cannot really fulfill it, and other sites might be more competitive than we are. As I said, for X-FAB, we are in the situation that even our external sites in Asia or in the US, they do have to follow these regulations now as well. They have to report, at least show the data, and then we have to set goals. But yeah, we have to look into that, like what's the sweet spot between over-regulation and staying competitive.
And then there's the other aspect that the environmental methods don't have to be more expensive. So the best case is that you can combine this. So that was also what I tried to say. So normally we can motivate, beside of the government, also the industry, as soon as we can have a solution that on the same in the same moment is more cost efficient. So sometimes it's good to replace things, and we find sometimes really cheaper solutions are so. Or if you, for example, you take the CMP process again to do the recycling, so you are using the same resource again and again, so you don't have to buy it several times, and you need just an additional small equipment with normally not high energy costs beside your normal equipment, and then you directly reduce your your resource costs. So a new method don't need to be more cost intense. So it can be with a good idea in mind, also be really interesting for this point. So
yeah, it's a bit coming back to the basic thing. If you don't want to waste resources, then you're also saving something, not just for the environment, but also cost and also labor costs and other things. It doesn't really work out in total. It's not like we are so efficient here compared to Asia that we always win. No, it's not the case. That would be too much to ask from the environmental part. But there are many cases where actually internal recycling, being more efficient, using the scarce materials only where you really need them, is actually also good for cost reasons.
And I think we have to communicate this fact more, not only the technical solutions or the technological improvements, but also the cost benefits. It's also a task for funding agencies like us, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so, any other questions? Actually, even though it's a long day, I was thinking you as a group are more active, actually. Well, it was just my impression today. Yeah, go ahead.
So, to touch upon the previous topic, the new regulations, which is, for example, coming to rule, and for a company like X-FAB, where the machines are old, and for small industries, it's not possible that they can just update their machines on just because of a regulation. In such criteria, what would be the decision that you lean towards? Whether it would be to, okay, you can kind of adjust and follow a middle ground, or would it be like you have to do this and otherwise it'll be like you'll be forced to go to extreme measures?
Well, so first of all, not all of our machines are old.
I'm sorry for that.
Our buildings are old, but the machines are actually quite new. So, okay. So I'm not sure if I totally understood your question correctly. So maybe we can clarify that first. So you are talking about if regulations impose some actions we have to take, or
yeah. So for X-FAB and Bosch, these are big companies.
Yeah.
And there are smaller companies which is in this industry. So in that case, what would be the decision leaning towards? Would it be like, okay, you can try to find a middle ground to impose these regulations, or would there be some extreme measure that would be taken?
Well, at least for if I think about the EU regulations now, they already have some built-in lenience towards smaller companies. So they have delayed reporting guidelines and so on. So they have a little bit more time, and anyway they have a reduced reporting set. They need to even look at if they are, I think it's below 500 workers total. So there's already some built-in leniencies there, so they don't need to spend that much effort and time to really fulfill these requirements, because in the end, realistically, their impact is also much lower than for the bigger companies.
Yeah, nevertheless, of course, you need some minimal data from all players upstream in the supply chain. So you can't have them no data or no obligations at all. But that's, again, part of what I said with better regulation, right? Tailoring it so that the larger companies, or those who are the larger polluters actually, have to do more, and those who are smaller anyhow and have a smaller workforce, they have to do less, but they have to do something. Otherwise, it will be blank in the whole balance sheet.
Yeah, but another aspect is so also for the research, it's not always possible to buy a new equipment as soon as it's available on the market. So we try to have the newest as possible, but we have also some older ones. And it's interesting that especially in the semiconductor industry, the equipment or the machine itself is often not the problem. So it's more the details. So it's really, especially for environmental aspects, the chemical you use. And it's often, for the equipment itself, easy to change the chemical. So it's not that the equipment can't use this chemical, it's more that we users have problems to use this chemical correctly, that we get the same result. So so often the equipment is really not the main point. So if you have now energy regulations, okay, but then you can normally use the scope 2 option, that you change it your energy source with a green energy one, so that you have more photovoltaic or other options with the building. So that's also a good fact. So normally semiconductor fabs are really big, so you have a big space on top or on the your wall. So there are options to implement green energy sources. So that's the other point. So it's not that difficult even with older equipments to fulfill requirements. It's more that you don't have time if you are a small company.
So, more questions? Maybe anyone in the back? I mean, it's probably, oh yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I have a question here. Do you think Europe, Germany in particular, is prepared to compete with the US, China, and other countries worldwide in semiconductor manufacturing with all the US tariffs or Trump taxes, as they are called, going on? And most of the raw materials are coming from China, as we all know. So some say that we are already lagging behind. So what do you think, and what more can we do?
Yeah, that's a nice big topic, which is not at all only about green, right? Green is about the efficiency part of that and not the geopolitics of it. Geopolitics, of course, is also about, well, what are the scarce resources and do they come from China? But anyone who wants to take up that one, or?
Should I? Yeah. So, as you already mentioned, this is a wide field now. I want to focus on one specific point. It's what products and what devices we really produce. So as a researcher, of course, I'm also in conferences and hear all the developments over the world that's going on in the moment. So, and there you can see that each country, each or union has their own focus. So, and I don't want to say which one is now the best, because that's individual and it's normally related to what we want to develop. So for us, for example, it's now important to be one of the leading research institutes also for quantum computing, and there you need other specifications than in other fields. Like, for example, you can use, it's now really specific, but you can have a stack on the front and on the back side of a chip there, or maybe is Belgium better than Germany? So it's always a little bit in the detail, but we can be expert on the fields where we are, even with our regulations. And I don't see that it's always, okay, there can be just one. It's more than we have all, in the end, individual projects and also products. So.
You might or might not know that the EU, of course, has set this goal that they want to have 20% of global semiconductor manufacturing back in Europe. So yeah, we are all very skeptical about how that is happening if everyone else is also running forward at full speed. How can you catch up and get 20%? But we are making progress, and especially now here, since you're in Dresden, of course, with the semiconductor fabs, even though this is happening in the same situation where now Trump is trying to pull more fabs to the US, still things are being built here, things are growing here, things will be producing here, and maybe it's not the same kind of memory chips or processors that will be built in the other fabs, mostly now in Taiwan and now increasingly in China. So we need other products, and the European market is already focusing on other products like power electronics, communication electronics, so high-speed electronics, stuff like that. And including maybe 3-5 semiconductors like gallium nitride. So those are some of these fabs here will be silicon-based, but not at the lowest technology nodes, because that is also needed for European products. But some are just we go for other semiconductors for special applications.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I think we will not be able to catch up with TSMC, let's say, or all the other players in Asia going for the lowest node. And maybe that's not necessary, and I don't think it is necessary, because we have a very strong foundation in Germany and in Europe overall. We see it specifically for gallium nitride at the moment. We have a lot of European companies approaching us as well, who have great ideas, and they cannot get them from any other foundry or any other company, even worldwide. So we are in a very nice position right now. So we have to make use of that, and we have to develop that. And at the same time, there are other applications. So I think now in Magdeburg, after Intel stepped out, there are some talks about this FMC from Dresden also using that space to build a new technology there for DRAM chips. So maybe there are just innovations needed which are not just smaller, 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 because smaller isn't always smarter. So we have to go in that direction as well. And especially, I know it for X-FAB, so we are well built in that area. So we are the analog foundry of choice and the specialty foundry of choice. We want to be that. And therefore also be the European foundry of choice for these special applications there.
So it means maybe then we reach 10%, but with very special markets, because they will not cover 20%. Right, thanks for that question, even though it was very broad.
I have one question regarding the supply chain safety of the semiconductor industry in Europe. So as we have seen, for example, in COVID pandemic and with the ship getting stuck in the canal and all that, especially concerning, for example, our automotive industry, but also now defense industry. I don't know if these industries need the most advanced technology nodes and chips, but I'm concerned that I don't know if Europe has the supply chain safety to address global crises. And do you think this is the case?
Well, so I mean that is part of the same package, right? Having more semiconductor manufacturing in Europe, but also really having the supply chain ahead of what you need to produce the semiconductors in Europe. You can't have all of it here. There are some chemicals which you just can't produce here anymore, even though you need them. But it's part of kind of the same package and the same development to have better supply chain safety for semiconductors. But we won't have them for all semiconductors again. It's like, which markets are the strong ones here in Europe, and for those we try to have it. What I still am unsure about is how much money will governments spend on fabs that are not competitive from the price point, but have to be in operation in case we ever need them, right? So this kind of redundant, resilient production, that's a lot of cost that is sunk and that is not really contributing. So I don't think will happen a lot. It has to be something which is specific to the European market and functions on its own and has, in addition, the supply chain security.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't have to underestimate in general that we are also focused on, as you mentioned, so they really don't need always the highest level of innovation, especially in these markets. But so I think we focused in the last year to enable also all the supply chains for this. So I think we pushed a little bit the chemical industry again in our own country. So we have big companies like BASF and Wacker, for example. And then you have, on the other hand, also enough companies which are producing the normal kind of chip, so that you need for I don't know, honestly there are a lot of chips now necessary for a car, so I think it's so I think over 100, I don't know, but yes, a lot in each car. So and you can produce them in the fabs also of Infineon, Global Foundries. ESMC is coming now also with a big, so they want to produce a lot of chips over the year. So and maybe also several of X-FAB. I don't know exactly who is producing for which market, but we have more now than in the past. So they have been a focus on these topics. That's the reason that Silicon Saxony is really growing. So Infineon has soon a new fab with then also 1,000 new employees. I think that's already saying something about the production line that they plan or are nearly finished. And then there will be ESMC with a big area of just for production. Really, there is no talking about big innovations. It's more we want to have a bigger chip production in Germany. So this is also a focus on not just the innovations. They are necessary, but yeah, you have also these topics to have more here, and then also short, transport ways. It's nice to have then everything a little bit closer, maybe.
And of course, ministries also have kind of strategic processes or risk-based processes. So if there's a gap in the ecosystem, we try to figure out which funding instrument or program might fit in this gap, so the ecosystem is well established to close the gaps.
Thank you.
Hello. I have one question. Like EU circular economy action plans set target for recycling. So how are these being enforced for data centers, and what are the ministries planning for the funding for this specific data centers action plans? Thank you.
Can you repeat just the last sentence?
Yeah, the ministries are how they are planning to for their fundings to implement that process.
We have the high-tech agenda from the BMFTR, also the Ministry of Research, Technology and Space, has published the high-tech agenda in July this year. And we have some strategic topics, like, for instance, sustainability research, and also circularity is part of this research agenda. And so we have the chance to implement these topics into research agenda in Germany. So this is the plan, to implement these life cycle thinking into research processes.
But when you say circularity for data centers, most people think about material recycling.
Yeah.
And material recycling actually works for data centers because there's value in the materials, so somebody takes them back and they are professionally recycled. The question is, how can we make the chips that were produced last longer, or use them in other applications maybe? So that's something which is now, and we came across that as a question also in our lecture part, right? So that's something which it should be available now, but it has to still be built and to be researched. So we're in that process now. But it's not like the material recycling is really the problem for a data center. So I don't think targets from the EU for material recycling are necessary for data centers. They are necessary for other products. And the other thing where data centers are struggling is, of course, the heat. So recovering the heat to put them into heat networks and to reuse the heat elsewhere. So that's also something which is pushed by not only the EU but also by German legislation. And that will be quite interesting whether the data centers manage to do that. If they're in a remote location, not next to a swimming pool or next to a city, then it's getting complicated. But that's the other thing where it's also kind of a cycle of the heat, right? So that's also circularity. But the hardware recycling, so the reuse of the hardware, that's just being developed now.
So there are some fundings already allotted for that, or this is still in progress?
No, that's more like in progress. I mean, there's some of the large data center operators, they do have internal recycling of the hardware. So like it's the newest generation data center, and then they still take some of the main boards, actually not the individual components, and put them into other data centers. So that is happening internally. But the question is, well, couldn't we make that happen on a larger scale? And that still has to be developed.
So the peoples are working on it, but internally. So if you publish that out and include some more pupils from outside, then that will be more helpful to make it successful. Yeah,
make it more apparent and transparent would be good. If it's just done by one of the large superscalar data center and they don't talk about it and they just claim or whatever and have no proof and nobody can see what they're really doing, that's not the best way to do it, yeah. And that might be where we're at the moment. So like Google, Amazon and so on, they do say they are doing great stuff already internally. And we would also like to see more proof of what they really do and what they contribute.
That's why I asked this question. I'm looking forward to listen about this more in future. Thank you.
I have a question. The semiconductor industry in Dresden is currently using about 60% of the water of Dresden. So with future expansions planned in X-FAB, Infineon, and ESMC starting operations in a couple of years, so is it not better to set up a dedicated utilities facility, or because or a separate industrial zone, as Dresden is the heart of the European semiconductor industry?
I think I didn't quite understand the question, sorry.
I'm just asking, the industry here, the semiconductor industry is taking about 60% of the water of Dresden, as we were told.
Okay.
So is it not better to set up a dedicated utilities facility or an industrial zone that caters directly to these industries, these companies?
Right, yeah, okay, now I understood it, thank you. Right, so water, yeah, very big point. I think I mentioned it in the beginning. So there are already concerns that the freshwater supply is not enough, because currently Dresden doesn't use fresh water from the river, but they use it from deep underground water. And that might not be enough to supply all of the fabs, so there are already plannings to use a river water supply, to use that to supply the fabs. So there is supposed to be a central facility building, then I would assume. I'm not too deep into the details there, but yeah, that is something we have to look at, specifically now with ESMC, then when they have finished their building and starting to ramp Infineon. Bosch, I think, also has possibly plans to extend their building and further increase the clean room size, so they will need more water as well. So there are already plans there. But,
And there are also plans, so always we were talking about fresh water, but if you have fresh water, you also have wastewater. And so I also knew that also this is now extended, because it's all now going honestly to one recycling factory. So that's a little bit too much water for just the possibilities they had, and they also think about this. So this is in mind, and I think it's anyway, even with this problem, it's good to focus on one area, because on the other hand, you can easier combine knowledge, because you don't have to underestimate how many supply companies you need for all the equipment, for example. So you have a lot of companies, then they help you with your daily problems or the changes you need for all the equipment, and it would be really difficult if you have the fabs in different cities. So then they have to be everywhere at once, and that's not possible. So even with the water problem, it's good to focus on one area.
And so water is a big problem, yes. It always has been for the semiconductor industry. It's not like, oh, suddenly we're aware of water problems, but it very much depends on the region. So this region actually has water. Nevertheless, now it's getting too much of a draw on the available water. Of course, there's other regions like producing chips in Arizona is very problematic for the water. But also in Taiwan, they don't have enough water. So they had a number of large water shortages where they had to prioritize whether the industry gets the water or people and agriculture gets the water, right? And usually it went to the industry. So that has also led to demonstrations and protests there. So far, I think here in the Dresden area with Silicon Saxony, I think people mostly are on board that it's a good thing to have the companies invest here, even though they need more water. But there are other areas in Germany where there are also protests about, well, if a new plant is opened, will they take away our water? So that's a real thing.
It's very important for the acceptance of these fabs and the whole industry. Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe one fun fact about X-FAB and water usage. So our fab in France, close to Paris, it uses river water from the Seine. It actually supplies cleaner water back to the river than it takes out of it. So still it uses a lot of water, so we have to think about it, but it's also quite funny, I think. It's not always negative that we use the water.
Any more questions? In there.
I saw that the funding of Green ICT is running out in the beginning of next year. Will there be a continuous program to continue the work and grow, let the knowledge grow of what they have done with Green ICT?
Right now, there's no program planned to verlängern, prolong.
Just continue with the same program, yeah.
Because the idea of the 3-year funding was to establish networks, to establish the knowledge transfer into society and to education, so that we can base on this level and think it's normal for electronic projects or funding projects to incorporate this knowledge gained in the 3 years of the competence center. But we are in discussion with the competence center what options we might have to support the activities for a longer time.
So you can imagine that those things of a large project like this that really help companies, and where companies now request additional help, those will just continue, right? That's the idea of having funding, to start it, but then to let it run afterwards. But things like the student camp, somehow we can't make that happen if we don't have additional funding. That's not within our normal budget. So nice things like this one, we'll have to find new funding for that. But as you said, we're talking about it, and hopefully, I mean, sustainability is one of the corner pillars of the microsystems research program in Germany. It's not like just like, yeah, and we can also do a bit of environment if we really have to. It's not at all. So don't misunderstand that currently there's no money for continuing, but there's a strong drive to continue in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So maybe you're waiting for dinner, and we actually are closing up. So I haven't prepared questions for the final round, but maybe we'll just go around once. So any final thoughts? Maybe more on water, maybe more on 3-5 semiconductors, or maybe on the future workforce that's sitting in front of you?
Yeah, so first of all, very nice questions, very great, very thoughtful. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think, as I said, I believe we need to work on these regulations a little bit more, because I think they can be very, very helpful to transform the industry to be more sustainable. And then again, of course, we need very innovative thinking people to work on that, who have an intrinsic drive they want to improve it, and they want to work, maybe they want to work directly on reducing impact of these fabs. Maybe they want to work on technologies that can help other companies to lessen their impact, using less power, using less water, in what way it ever may be. And I think X-FAB can support that, so if you have an idea, you can come to us.
Always a good point. So yeah, but to have ideas and just to mention them is always a good idea. So it's also in research, so just try it. Even if we don't have now a next funding, so there's always room for ideas and thoughts. So that's, I think, the most important thing. Just say it out loud. So don't just think about it, mention it. So, and where you then go, it's not that important. If it's research, government, or industry, I think all of them needs these ideas and these motivated people. So that's also nice to see today that here's a room full of motivated people being 1 week here, and just thinking about environmental topics.
Maybe I have to latch on and then come to you. So it's like, if somebody of my age tells you, we've done that before and it didn't work, don't even try. Well, sometimes it's good advice, but sometimes you still should try. Just say, well, because they didn't find the right solution, there could still be another solution. So I'm going to try again. I'm going to get together with others in a team or whatever. Depends on where you're working or studying or whatever, right? It's not always up to you to get the funding, but try again, even though somebody tells you, now we tried that 20 years ago and it just didn't work. That's very important. Never lose faith in if you work in a team, you can make it happen.
And I will take this short up because I'm working now also on new materials in semiconductor, honestly. And we are working now with these materials which they mentioned 20 years ago already. And now we are using them for the new applications. So it's kind of normal that someone already found something about materials or tested it once, but maybe there are just new options to use it. So that's what I wanted to say for 20 years ago. Because also in semiconductor, it's normally, yes, it has been there before, but it wasn't successful, but doesn't mean that it is not successful in the future.
I studied waste management 20 years ago here in Dresden, and I couldn't believe that I'm part of this project right now as a supervisor from a funding agency, and I'm very, very happy that I have this chance to combine environmental knowledge and the microelectronics and these research topics together. I think interdisciplinarity is one of the keys to solve the problems, the global problems we have, and I encourage you to go further in your study to be interested in these topics and to talk about it with your students, with other people about this camp, about the idea of the project. And personally, I'm convinced that we will find solutions for further projects, for the idea of the spirit of Green ICT Competence Center to make it more lasting than the 3 years of funding.
All right, and with that, we finished the podium. I would really like an applause for my colleagues on the podium here.